TOA community, welcome back everybody. Robert Linkul, trainingtheolderadult.com. This is Wednesdays with Robert, episode number 31. And we are going to dive into a semi-new article, well, a couple of them actually, on hypertrophy and a style of training that I think is not unique, but that's defined a little bit differently and prescribed very uniquely. And I just wanted to enlighten everybody on it. It's not something that I have personally done, but have read quite a bit, and I wanted to share it with everyone. Okay, so I guess I would say the first question I would ask you is, if you wanted to build the most muscle that you could, what would be the rep scheme that you would pursue? The original thought was anything from 1 to 3 reps made me very powerful. Anything from 5 to say 8 reps would really tear muscle fiber and make me really big. And then anything from 10 plus would make me more muscularly endured. And that was about it. That was kind of what we thought in the very beginning. If you weren't doing between 5 and 8 reps, you weren't going to tear the muscle fibers enough to make them grow bigger. And there were many bodybuilders in the 60s and 70s that were doing sets of 15 and 20 and 25, and they were getting these great results. So it kind of opened everybody's mind a little bit to, okay, maybe there's more than this kind of old school mindset of these 3 rep ranges, and that's about it. So the further that we kind of look into the research on this, 2 of the best, Dr. Mike Israetel, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, both do quite a bit of research on this. Layman College out in New York, and they have just tons of students that they get to work with, and they do research, I don't know, 25 to 100 articles, research papers a year that they're overseeing and they're involved with as the students go through it. So they get quite a bit of exposure to this. And a couple of the ones they found, this one specifically that Brad Schoenfeld was a part of, they looked at doing sets of 8 to 12 and also doing sets of 25 to 35 to see which one would produce more stimulus in muscle growth. And basically after 12 weeks, they found all of them pretty much produced the same muscle growth. There really wasn't one that stood out as significantly more than the other. So those ranges all started to vary anywhere from 4 to 6 reps as a low, all the way up to 30 or even 40 reps as a high. That what made the most difference in all of this was finding a load that best represented maximal effort for the desired rep, which means if I can only do 6 reps with 100 pounds, right? I could do 5 reps with 110. I could do 4 reps with 120. Ideally, I would get to like 150 and I could only do 1. That would give you a rep range, but a percentage on each lift in which you could go, okay, if I lift at 60%, I can get this many and so on. That kind of thing. You want to use those projected reps as a max. If you go, okay, well, my best is 100, and if I'm going to do, I could do 100 pounds once. If I'm going to try to do 20 reps, what would my projected weight be? Where when I got to 20, I couldn't do another one, right? Like 20 would then be my maximal effort. And so you'd kind of look at that chart and go, oh, geez, it's like 60 pounds. So you get 60 pounds and you just start repping away, and you get to 22, 23, 24, and you're like, well, I can go way over 20. I missed it on that one. The effort didn't match the desired load because the rep count, the weight was too light, the rep count was too high, or vice versa. Bottom line is, I don't know if I think I'm just confusing everyone, but what I'm saying, the bottom line is you've got to hit that target. Whatever the rep count is, you've got to be able to hit the target and say, that's as many as I could do. Now, some people, like myself, I can't do sets of 2, 4, 6, or even 8 with a load that is heavy, that tears muscle fiber and produces a good result on me because my body can't handle the stress of that amount of weight. But I can do sets of 20. I can do sets of 15 to 40, right? Anywhere in that further out range where it's a lighter load, but by the time I get to 20 reps and I'm like 19, 20, I just cannot do another one. My body can, my joints and my bones and my musculatures, I can support that amount of weight for that many reps. And I can still get this desired result of tearing and ripping my muscle fiber, right? Which this is good tearing, good ripping, which then produces a stimulus of growth. I build back those fibers start to rip a little and they grow back a little bigger, and those start to rip a little and they grow back bigger, and that's how you get bigger muscles, right? So with that kind of keeping in mind, that's a big range. So it's like, okay, anywhere between 4 and 40. Well, how do I know which one I am and which one I should try and this and that? So that's where this article came. This is a book written by Dr. Yessis called the 1x20. It's the Revolutionary 1x20 Strength Training Program. This is from his website, and it talks a little bit about him and his history. Here's the book itself. And then I'm going to show you a couple of individuals that have implemented this, and they've had great successes. And you might recognize one individual. Here's Ryan Krauser, my athlete of the year and one of the greatest athletes of all time, is absolutely crushing the world in the shot put. And the world is very, very good at shot put right now. Very good. The best that it's ever been. We have 4 shot putters over 75 feet. The world record prior to this year was 75 feet. And so to have 4 guys go over that, and Ryan's got, the world record at 77.6 or something like that now, or 77.3, to have someone go, over 75 feet, the previous world record, I don't know, I think he's thrown over it like 6 or 7 times now. It's crazy the amount of times he's done that. Well, really, that's not true. He's thrown over it many more times. You get multiple throws per competition. He's thrown over that mark, 15 times in competition now, but you only get to count it as 1 with every competition, right? What was your last throw? We count that towards the greatest of all time, etc. So bottom line is, it works for these very good, very high-level athletes. But the more I went into the website, the more I found that they've kind of got this training for everybody. It's not just athletes, but it was for, not just power athletes, it was for endurance athletes. They had a volleyball section, they had a cross-country section, they had a golf section, they had tennis, they had, you name the sport, there was a section on it. And so this gentleman here, I didn't get his name, but he did his version of this. I think he plays football or maybe lacrosse, something like that. I wasn't sure. But he showed like his program, and he built a whole little PDF out of it. Very impressive. From there, but that led me even further into the NSCA's Personal Trainer Quarterly, Volume 9, Issue 3. This is from September of 2022. Okay, so a couple of years ago. But there's an article in there on the 1x20 strength training program specifically for older adults. So I'm like, man, now we're talking our demographic of folks. Is Dr. Yessis's philosophy effective with the aging population? And so this starts off by kind of introducing what the 1x20 program is. And so he dives into that a little bit. And there are 3 different levels in which you implement this. And so we'll kind of show you those, level 1, 2, and 3. And he gives some of the principles that you want to focus on when you're going in there. And the goal is, in the beginning, to introduce maybe like 6 exercises. So he's got on here leg extensions, leg curls, hip abduction, adduction, bicep curls, tricep extensions, 8 exercises, abdominal flexion, and lower back extensions, okay? So kind of targeting the lower half and the arms, not a whole lot of back or chest or anything yet. And basically, as the program says, 1 set of 20, you have, these are your single joint exercises. So that's why we're not using a deadlift or a rack pull or a bench press or a row, because those are multi-joint exercises. Is that with each single joint exercise, you would do one set of 20 reps at about 50% your 1RM. Once again, if you don't know what your 1RM is, you're just going to kind of guess weight in the beginning. You could do, say, an 8 or a 10 rep projected 1 rep and then get an idea and go from there. Especially with the aging pop, I think it's a really risky move to do anything like that where you are attempting to get a 1 rep maximum number out of them. I think it's better to just train and go, okay, here's a very lightweight, let's do 20. And then the next time do 20, and the next time do 20, and the next time do 20, and just keep doing that, time over time over time until you get to a point where it's like they could barely do 21 if I asked them to. Well, then I found my 100% effort for 20 reps on that exercise. Now, I know it took a while to get there, but now I've got an idea, right, of what I can actually do for this. So I think that's a safer way, because you're also going to be building up a very solid foundation, an adaptation phase, entry-level base layer of strength over a couple, 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks to like build someone up to that. Because if you just take the older adult and if they are, especially if they're untrained and deconditioned, you're gonna hurt them 100%. Trying to get them to do a 1 rep max or a projected 1 rep max, you're gonna hurt them for sure. So not worth it, okay, in my opinion. So the program suggests 4 to 6 weeks of just doing that, okay? 4 to 6 weeks of just those single joint exercises. Every 2 to 3 days, 48 hours of rest in between, 1 set of 20 all the way through. And then the next week, you would add, I think it was 1.5 to 2.5 kilos. So that would be 3 to 6 pounds, 3 to 7 pounds, somewhere in there. You add that every week, going up, 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 up every week until you find like 20 was my maximal effort with this weight. So let's use the leg extension as an example. I'll put 20 pounds on there and I do 20, I'm like, that wasn't that bad. Then the next week, okay, I do that 3 times that week. Then the next week I'd put 30 pounds on there. Okay, let's take a little bit bigger jump. I do 30, I'm like, that still wasn't that bad. I did my 20. And then the next week I do 35. That burned a little bit, but it wasn't bad. The next week I go to 40. The next week I go to 45. Oh, this is burning pretty good. The next week, the last week I go to 50 and I'm like 19, 20, and I just barely kind of finish it. Maybe I've got 1 or 2 reps in reserve. Then I would say, okay, you nailed it. Like we started with, if I end with 50 and I started at 20, I was probably at a 40% starting rate then, right? I think that's fairly accurate. And then kind of built my way up from there. That's a really safe way to start this. And I got a good progressive overload as I went. I built a great adaptation phase in the beginning, which is my body getting used to this new stimulus. Now, how many sets am I doing? 8. I'm doing every exercise once. So I'm not gonna overstimulus or overstress. Am I gonna cause a ton of damage in the beginning? No. And that's okay. This is a good way to introduce lifting and resistance training and a slight progressive overload to someone who is very deconditioned and not trained, and build up their body slowly, 2 to 3 days a week. 3 would be ideal, and get them, because you're only gonna be in there for what, like 10 or 12 minutes to do 8 of these. If you're taking a minute of rest in between each one, and it takes you a minute to do each exercise, then we're in there for 16 minutes, okay? So even if you're taking more than that, maybe 20 minutes, and then we're gonna progress. So your 6 weeks we've built up. Now we should have a pretty decent idea, at least for the simple joints, auxiliary lifts, single joint exercises. We should have a pretty good idea of what I can do for 20 reps. So now in the next phase, we're gonna introduce squat to a box, a chest press, a seated row, leg extension curl, all the same, all those are singles, rotary, torso they put in there, but all the rest are the single joints that we had. And we're gonna do 1 set of each one of those now. And so the single joints, you already know what your 50% is because you know what your max effort is. So you could go back down, understanding that you're gonna introduce other lifts in there, or in most cases, I think you would kind of keep it somewhat consistent or somewhat close to a maximal effort, because again, you're only doing 1, right? But it is gonna be a max effort each time. So how much do I wanna gas myself with, let's see, 12, it looks like, exercises now that are gonna do a fairly close to maximal effort. Now, because you're introducing the box squat, the chest press, the seated row, and the rotary, 4 new exercises, you're not gonna know what your 50% is, so you're gonna have to build that up slowly. And we do 50, and then 55, and then 60, and 65, and 70, and you kind of build up to the point where you're around a 75, 80% effort, or whatever it is, that gets you to, hey man, that's my maximal for 20, right? So we've done that again. Then you get to the, here's another sample of 2. So in this one, they've introduced, what else did they introduce in here now? We got the seated row, we got a leg press that they worked in, a chest fly that they've worked in, reverse fly, they got a couple new ones they put in there, right? So they're introducing those. And then number of repetitions have now gone to sets of 14, but they've increased intensity up to sets of 65, okay, percentage of 65. So now instead of doing our sets of 20 with this lighter 50% load that we again had to kind of build up to find, we now have an idea of each of those for the next 4 to 6 weeks of a 65% effort, a little heavier load, but we're only gonna do 14 reps now, and we're gonna address that and go after that. And then by level 3, you're into your multi-joints and some of your singles still, but you're gonna do multiple sets now. And notice we work all the way down to 8 repetitions for the chest press, 8 repetitions for the leg press, for the row, for the curl, 14s for some of the other ones. And those intensities are going all the way up to 75%, for our sets of 8 now. So this could be a way to progress someone from these sets of 20 to build this great foundation, this great adaptation phase in the beginning, introduce in these single joint movements, build up a good amount of strength, build up some security in the joints to make sure you're not going to cause damage, and then progress them, if you will, up to the point where they can do multi-joint lifts, and then build that level of intensity by increasing how much weight you're lifting. And then from there, you can even come back and cycle back. Notice the chest press, there's 2 sets of 8. Leg press, 2 sets of 8. Seated row, 2 sets of 8. Leg curl, 2 sets of 8. So we start to circle back again, still getting 20 sets, right? I think it's 16 on this one. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, 16 sets altogether by the time you're done, okay, building up into that. So they kind of give a final review on this, looking at, which this was pretty interesting, by the year 2050, the United States will experience considerable growth in its older population. The baby boomers who began turning 65 in 2011 are largely responsible for what has been described as the graying of America, meaning we have people living into older ages and living longer than usual. And the baby boomer era is the era that has been taking full advantage of good medication and healthcare, full advantage of resistance training and fitness and trying to improve their quality of life through improving their health. And then giving a ample amount of attention to hydration, quality of food, sleep, cognition, supplements, etc., to help them live even longer and live better quality of life. So because we're seeing that, all those efforts kind of happen in that generation is living longer. And I think all the generations under it are going to learn from that and thus make us live a bit longer, right? So you'd have Generation X and then Generation Y and then Z and then whatever else the other generations are, all going to be kind of learning from this, like, let's do what they did. Look what a good job they just did. The average person was living to like 67 or whatever, and now they're living to 73, like on average. And that's not a huge jump, but it is. If you look at that and go, man, we were increasing life expectancy every decade or every 2 decades by a half a year, 9 months, something like that. So for one group, one generation to increase, 7 or 8 years of life expectancy, that's significant. That's a big ass jump. From 67, 68 to 73, 74, like somewhere in there, that's a big jump of life expectancy to carry even longer. Okay, that's the average individual. I understand there are people living into their hundreds and whatnot, but not on average. Okay, so their strategy in this is if you can create a opportunity for people as they're aging, where we're seeing this drop of muscle mass and ability, right? You're going to get right up to about 35, 40, right around in there. 30 to 40, they're really going to meet their peak, and then they're going to start coming back down towards the disability threshold. We talk about that often, which is this zone where you're no longer going to be able to take care of yourself. You are going to be now dependent on someone else to help take care of you, right? You are now, entering the disability threshold. So I need a cane, I need a walker, I need someone here to help dress me. All my ADLs, those kinds of things are becoming very challenging. If that's going to happen around 60 for the average detrained, deconditioned, undertrained individual, right? The average person who's going to train a little bit or introduce a little bit of higher quality of life earlier in their years, maybe they don't hit the disability threshold until they hit 75 or 77. So they've already lived longer than expected and on their own longer than expected. And then that individual is like, man, I really want to focus on getting as strong as I can. So in their 60s, they're like, I'm going to get the weight room and I'm going to do this and that. And they're going to level up again. And now they've made it into their 80s and they're still independent, right? Or maybe they've got the assistance of a cane or a walking device, but they can do all their ADLs and they can do all the other things on their own. Well, we've already set now such a high bar because the current expectation is, thumbs up, the current expectation is right around 60, 65, you're going to be losing so much muscle mass that you probably can't take care of yourself or do anything like get up and down off the floor or ascend up and down stairs, that kind of activity. So this kind of last little section here kind of highlights like you're going to lose a significant amount of muscle mass as you age, entering your, I think the 8th decade of life, up to a 30% decrease in your muscle mass. That's a massive chunk of muscle mass lost. And think of the ability and function that goes with that. That's the average person. Most people, I think, are going to be even more if they're not trained. If they are trained, hopefully you only lose like 10%, or 15%. Now, we're not talking about muscle mass like huge, bulky Arnold, staying Arnold into his 80s. We're talking about functionality. People keeping enough musculature to, per their average individual of their age and height and weight and all that for where they're at, they're going to be well above average for that because they're so well muscled that they're capable of doing all of these things. Now, if you're going to do something as simple as, let me pick 16 to 20 exercises and just do one set of 20 on each one, I could get a very well-rounded program. I could get a great effort on each. I could get near maximal load, meaning I'm going to hit an RPE of like 9, okay, or a reps in reserve of like 1 or 2, right? You're going to work at a 95% maximum effort. When that means when you hit 20, you can only maybe do like 1 or 2 more reps. Like there's no more. You're working at such a high capacity. If you could do that on every one of those exercises, and some may be machines and others may be free weights, or maybe they're all free weights or whatever it is, but one time across the board, that whole thing, if I took a 1.5 minute rest in between each, and it took me a minute to do my 20 reps, I'm looking at 2.5 minutes per exercise times 20 exercises. So I'm looking at 45 to 50 minutes. If my math is right there. Again, I'm no mathematician, but right around a 45-minute workout, 3 days a week. I've covered everything and I've given a great effort. Does that sound kind of familiar to anybody? Any of those bodybuilding fans out there, you may be thinking of someone like a Mike Mentzer, like somebody who did that max effort training, that high intensity training where they would do one maximal effort with a very high load, a heavy load, but they would be, pushing towards sets of 15 or 20 or 25 reps, but just killing themselves to get every single rep they could out of it. I mean, screaming, they barely finish a rep, and that'd be 22. And then they would do like 80% of the rep range for 23, and then 60% for 24, and 25, 26, 27, 8, 9, 9. They barely have the bar moving at the end. Eyes are bulging, blood, vessels squirting out of their eye, like just, that's it. But they'd only do it once. They do a couple warm-up sets, with less, but then one really freaking hard set. And that was a strategy and a training style. And then you have Arnold on the other side doing 10-10s, right? And so I'm going to do 10 reps of 10 sets of one exercise. And when you saw them on stage, you're like, they're both big muscular dudes. This guy's doing one set of 25 and killing himself, and this guy's doing 10 sets of 10 and working hard, yeah, but he's not working that hard, right? But both producing results. When we do a discussion like this, I don't really bring anything back to you and say, you should go and do this. This is the way. I'm just introducing, here's another way. Here's another way that people can get strong and have great results. And maybe to you, like going into the gym and just getting on every single machine in there that they have and doing the whole gamut. There's 25 machines in there. I'm just going to do one set of 20 on every single one of those. And I do that every other day. Yes, that might be monotonous and boring, but if you're giving your best effort, meaning like 19, 20, maybe 21, 22 reps at the max, right? But you just hit 20 every time. You're working at such a high intensity on each of those. Do you think you're going to get strong? Hell yeah. Do you think you're going to build really good musculature? Probably. Arnold size? No, but you're going to build some good muscle mass and maintain muscle mass. Your joints and tendons will stay nice and strong. Your physique and your body's ability to maintain and hold on to muscle mass and increase bone density, those are all going to be in high demand and produced very well, because you're not going to do any of them to such an extreme or exhaustion where you could overtrain or really injure yourself. because you've built up this system, right? You've built up this ability. And I may be wrong in how we implemented it. Again, I'm just kind of looking at this guy's article as we go through. I might be wrong with the percentages and such as like how to actually strategize it. But I think what I kind of laid out there for you, that gradual progression would work really well. And you could get to a point where you're like, whenever I leg press, I'm going to go around and do, 10 reps on everything or 10 reps on a couple of exercises to loosen up and just make sure I'm ready. And then I'm warm, I'm good. I know my numbers on the leg press. I've got to be at 200 pounds. I can do 20 reps at 200 pounds and I'm gassed on that one. Then I'm going to go to the chest press. I can do 180 pounds. I can do 20 right at that. And then I'm going to go to the row and then you just bump. You work your way all the way through. By the time you're done, you should have one hell of a great workout in, and you've addressed everything, and you haven't overtrained any muscle group or any joint in particular because you didn't exhaust it with a billion sets. Now, can you look at that and go, well, my upper body got a good, 8 to 10 sets? Yep. And my lower body got a good 8 to 10 sets? Absolutely. So that's great. If I do 4 sets of deadlift and 4 sets of split squats and 4 sets of step ups and 4 sets of kettlebell swings or whatever it is, right? And you can say, well, there's 16 sets right there, but I only did 4 lifts. You did 20. Who did a better job? I don't know. In terms of what we're trying to produce, both work great. Both work. And as we showed you in those couple of clips with Brad and Dr. Israel, and Dr. Schoenfeld, their info here, both work. I could do 3 sets of 20 on one. I could do 1 set of 20 with a maximal load on another. I could do 4 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 15 on another. I mean, as long as I am selecting a progressive overload, which I say in every single exercise, right? Every video I talk about, you got to have enough load to make it a progressive challenge. Lifting a load that you can just do nonstop over and over again. And when you set it down, you're like, I could do 20 more of those. There's zero challenge in that for you. That's a great little warm up or tune up, right? Just to kind of get your joints like ready to go. But did you just make yourself stronger? Absolutely not. You need to be somewhere between, I'm going to give you 8 at the most, but like 4 reps in reserve. Meaning when you get done lifting, you could go, I could have done maybe 4 more of those and that would have been it. That's going to be the perfect weight. So you're picking up a kettlebell and you have a 20 kilo kettlebell and you pick it up, you set it down the last time. There's 15 reps. I could have done maybe 17, 18, maybe 19 or 20. Like if I really push myself, then that's probably a good weight. That is a significant overload that will produce a good result. And as you continue to train with that, eventually you're going to get to the point where you can do 20 reps. And you're like, I think I could probably do like 23 or 24. Well, I don't want you to go that high because of the program we've built. I want you to increase your load now. Okay, well now I go to a 24 kilo kettlebell, a heavier one. And now I can only do 16, and maybe I can only do like 2 more with that. And I'm gonna keep training with that weight until the point where I'm like, okay, I think I could probably do 20, or maybe even 22. That is progressive overload. That's how you continue to stress your bones and stress your muscles and build good muscular strength and even some hypertrophy, some growth where your muscles get a little bigger, okay? And as I tell you in every video, I've been trying my entire life to get too bulky and it has yet to happen, right? I can still touch my head and I can still brush my teeth and I can still drink water and I can still get my hands behind my back and do all the things, dress myself, do all the things. I haven't gotten too bulky to where I can't, function in life. When I get there, I'll let you know. Am I ever going to get there? I don't think so. So I don't think we have to have that concern if I'm going to get too bulky, especially you ladies out there, because as you're aging, your hormonal response to resistance training is just getting less and less and less and less and less. So you need to lift more and you need to lift heavier and you need to keep your bones and your muscles as strong as you can. And the chances of you getting bulky, unless you're pumping something into your body that is not natural, which I'm okay with, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't. If you're doing some kind of hormonal response, I do hormonal response. That's okay. If you need it, take it. I lived 10 years of my life with a 0 testosterone score, okay? Cancer twice and different therapies and different drugs that I had to take and all this stuff destroyed my thyroid. I had a cancer in my thyroid, had to have my thyroid taken out. All of that damage messed with my testosterone production so much. It's why I had such a hard time losing any body fat. I had such a hard time gaining any muscle mass. I went through this slug period where I just had no desire to exercise, no energy, no effort. every time I'd try a little, I'd get exhausted and I'd just be like, I don't want to do this shit. And then I finally got my testosterone score test and it was a 0. At 0, it's supposed to be between 250 and 1,000, and mine was 0. And they went back and looked at my blood work before my other surgeries from the last 7 years, and they're like, you were a 0 back in 2008 when we had your first surgery. And I'm like, why didn't anybody say anything? Well, we weren't testing for testosterone then. We were worried about taking that tumor out of your lung. And I said, okay, I mean, that makes sense. So, you know, a decade later, it's like, why don't we help this guy out? I'm totally cool with that. If that's what you need, ladies going through menopause and all that, I totally get it. I'm not anti-medications and doing, I'm just saying, if you think naturally by lifting heavy weights, all of a sudden you're gonna get so big and muscular that your shirts won't fit and your neck is gonna be gone and your thighs are gonna rub together, that's not the case. It just isn't. You don't have enough testosterone or even estrogen as you age to help you grow that much muscle. But can you put in a lot of hard work and maintain really good muscle mass, maybe grow them a little bit, and then just kick-ass bone structure and have great strong muscles that last you your whole life and doesn't cause, you know, any irreparable damage to you, meaning that if you ever fall or take a tumble or something, your bones don't just snap in half and break apart and you bruise and tumble your body up. I mean, no. That I think you can keep yourself strong and capable and able your whole life by doing a set of 20 on every exercise in the gym. Now, do I think that's gonna be boring? Yeah, but I trained clients that did 10 years of the exact same routine I gave them on day one. They never changed it again. And every other day they were in there kicking ass on those machines. And you know what? They all looked really strong and they all looked very fit and they all stayed consistent and they all continued to challenge the weight, right? They weren't doing the same weight they did on day one. They were just doing the same order of exercises and the same lifts. So that's them, man. That's so type A, and if that's what you need, do it. But if you like variety and difference and change and such, all that matters across the board is you're putting in work and that there's a progressive overload to be had. This is one more way to do it. As long as you are using weight that challenges you for at least 4 reps, all the way up to 40 reps, you are going to benefit your bone density, your muscle mass, your cognition, your coordination. You're going to benefit your body across the board. You will battle and fight off sarcopenia and you will stay independent. Pretty cool stuff, in my opinion. Like, not a whole lot of things that we run into in life where you're like, hey, here's a way to do something and here's 30 other ways to get almost the exact same result and they all work. Pick which one you want. You know, one way is definitely going to make you super muscular. Another one's going to make you really, really powerful and athletic. Another one's going to make you look just kind of normal and be very capable. And there's a whole slew of stuff in between all of that, whichever one you want. But if you look at all of those people across the board, they're all going to have strong bones. They're all going to have good muscle mass. They're all going to be very capable and able of doing life activities. And they're probably going to age really, really well and do just fine. Getting anywhere near that disability threshold is not on their radar. They're going to stay independent for a long time. That's from your bodybuilders to your shot putters, the most muscular, slower individuals to the most dynamic, explosive individuals. And if you put them side by side, you're going to go, they're both bigger and more muscular people. That's cool. Most powerful, big, explosive, throwing shot puts. Most muscular, holding poses long periods of time. And then across the board, all the way down to the runners who pounding their body on the asphalt, but also lift weights to keep their upper body strong, etc. They're going to have the same thing. They'll maintain some muscle mass, not as much as Arnold and not as much as Brian Shaw and not as much as Randy Barnes and all the other shot putters, Ryan Krauser, etc. Not as much as all them, but they'll have enough muscle mass to carry another life as long as they keep lifting with what? Progressive overload. That's right. All right, 34 minutes, that's probably enough. I hope you've enjoyed this. Comments or questions, hit me up down below in the comment section. Please subscribe and join if you haven't already. We really appreciate it and help us grow the community. We appreciate that as well. And until next time, I hope you continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.